fully spelt out the long way.
It's all fully spelled out here on the Geeky Gamer Podcast. That's where we
don't
are
leave anything.
With
leave anything to mystery.
Hosts Ken and Bill. I forgot to give you guys a countdown, but technical issues being the way they are. We do this every Thursday at exactly 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks to the music by all lowercase letters, Mr. Interrupt, as well as Couchfire Media brings us production, and Trois Replay production from 2018 to 23 gave us everything else. Please feel free to join our Patreon. We currently have Patreon members for other projects that we're doing, but not for this one. For the Geeky Gamer Podcast, you can find that at patreon.com/Geeky Gamer Podcast. Our guest today is Todd Max Carey. I didn't ask him how to say his name, so that was a fail on my part. Todd is a filmmaker who's got 25 plus years of expertise in doing shit, marketing, consulting, filmmaking, creating content, internationally, world traveled. So this guy is not, he's not sitting in his bedroom at home playing
Which,
guitar.
oddly enough, I'm pretty much doing exactly that right now. No, I'm sorry. But it's not actually my bedroom, but it looks like that. Anyway.
What's going on? How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me on. It sounds like fun. I was listening to you guys getting warmed up for the show and thought, okay, this is going to be more fun than usual. They're just sort of like trash talking each other a little bit, and that looks like fun. So I'm always more comfortable with people that can take a joke. I was going to say, when you say about how you started without a countdown, I was thinking, well, yeah, it's just general incompetence, but that's okay. You're going now.
Yeah, we're going.
He's not wrong.
I'm hanging out, promoting my last movie, Touch Kink, and working on a new television series that I hopefully start next year. Boy, next week would be great.
Nice.
So yeah, just kind of resettled in Luxembourg and getting things going.
Luxembourg.
Oh yeah, tell us about Luxembourg.
Hold up. That was I almost didn't catch it. I was like, wait a minute. So tell us about Luxembourg.
Luxembourg, it's this wonderful tropical nation. Most people don't know about it. It's in the South Pacific. It's there's beautiful girls in bikinis everywhere. free margaritas.
I do love some margaritas.
I was going to say you're lying. I know a little bit about geography. That is absolutely not true.
World War I and World War II. This is basically the battlefield for those wars.
You're in Germany. Is that correct?
No, it's wedged between Germany and Belgium and France. I am not joking. I can see the Belgian border from my window. It's not a big country. About 300,000 people, actual Luxembourg citizens, and another 300,000 people work here. Richest country in the world per capita, highest income per capita. They're into, banking and lawyering and accounting and running big corporations. So it's actually quite a nice little country. It's like Switzerland, but even cleaner. So yeah, I like it. It's interesting.
It sounds well.
What possessed you to move to Luxembourg?
Two things. One, my partner is from here and she wanted to get back at some point. And two, the new series I'm doing is a Luxembourg-Canadian co-production. So the wonderful world of film finance, you get extra grants depending on citizenship of people working on the film. And I'm Canadian and I will soon actually be a Luxembourg citizen as well. So I can actually count as Luxembourg, the Luxembourg person for production purposes, and I can also count as a Canadian person for production purposes. It just worked out really well.
I'm assuming it's all of those languages. In Luxembourg, they speak like German, French.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, I feel so stupid here. I mean, I could barely speak English, and everybody here speaks 6 languages. You go to McDonald's and they're like perfect English, perfect German, perfect French, perfect Italian, perfect, and Luxembourgish is its own language too, of course. But it's sort of annoying. They're annoyingly clever people.
And I bet getting citizenship in Luxembourg is not easy. You have to
almost impossible. Unless you're the father of a Luxembourg citizen. I have a bouncing baby boy with my Luxembourgish partner who is a Luxembourg citizen, so Eddie gets one too.
That's pretty awesome. That's actually pretty cool that they do that.
Except for, well, they don't make it easy though. It'd be easy to live here, but I actually have to learn the language. They actually like force you to learn this language that almost, okay, I've got to worry how many people from Luxembourg could be listening to this, but I mean, they don't even speak this language, okay? But they insist everyone learns it. I mean, they all speak French if it's like a legal thing, German if it's a technical thing, and every other language when they feel like it. But no one really speaks Luxembourgish, but it's some way of like, but there's so many people living here and working here that are not Luxembourg citizens. I think it's kind of like the way they keep the club tight. Because their country basically doubles in size. Like 100,000 people, drive in from Belgium, France, and Germany every day, and then drive back to Belgium, Germany, and France every day to work here. It's a fascinating place.
So they're driving. It's not public transit, or
another wonderful thing about Luxembourg: only country in the world, free public transit everywhere in the country. You can hop on a train or a bus to Belgium for free.
That's
once
why
you're in
so
Belgium,
rich.
you have to pay. Well, actually, it's really smart because you think about it. I mean, you want to reduce pollution and you want people to move around more efficiently. You build a beautiful their public transit system's crazy. It's like, electric buses with chargers and warm seatings, and the tram plays classical music. I'm not making this shit up. You're going down and instead of just like you're at the stop, it's classical music it's playing, and then a lovely sort of introduction of where you're arriving, and then the next tram stop. It's ridiculous. It's wonderful. It's like how the world should be. It's also like the European Parliament. Somehow Luxembourg managed to get a lot of the plum jobs in the European Union. So, yeah, they did very well for themselves.
Nice.
It's crappy weather. That's the only downside. It's like, what part of the world are you guys from?
I'm from Kentucky.
Kentucky. Well, you got nicer weather then. It's more like New York kind of weather, kind of wet and dark a little bit in the winter. It doesn't snow that often.
It's wet and dark.
Coldish.
It's wet and dark now in Kentucky. It's 50s and pretty rainy. I'm in Kentucky currently. Bill is in Los Angeles.
You guys are talking Fahrenheit. There's only 2 countries in the world that still use Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what they are?
USA.
Yes, I do.
And
I want to think
that's it. Liberia.
Yeah.
Little country in Africa. Only 2 countries left in the world.
That's not what I was going to say. I was going to say the ones that win. That's the...
Oh, God.
Are you tired of winning yet? Are you tired of winning?
Winning is brutal. Brutal.
If Canada could get on the right track, then they would be used.
Actually, I have plenty of things to complain about with Canada. I've been
it's gonna happen.
My new just guy I like to listen to a lot of Scott Galloway. He's talking a lot about, and I think it's true. I mean, I'm seeing it. We've gone so far one way. There's this like group of young men that's being left behind. Suicide rates are doubled if you're under 35, and we're all supposed to just take it. It's true. The society had to adjust and be more diverse, and I totally get that. I'm a kinky guy. I'm totally down with that. But it feels like there's one group that's being left behind a little bit, and I like Canada doesn't seem to be waking up to that. I think the States woke up to that maybe more than some people wanted. But there's somewhere in the middle that might be good for both countries. I don't know.
Sure. Well, when I listen to the CBC radio, they're always talking about First Nations, so they're very concerned about that and say not other things, which I think is fair because it's been a pretty brutal time for First Nations people around the world.
I had no idea the shit that Canada was doing even to the 80s.
Yeah.
Forced sterilizations and we didn't, it's kind of, it is, a lot of people weren't aware just how bad it was and what we were doing to help or, Yeah, no, there's definitely a national reckoning going on, and probably needs to happen.
So before we get too deep into it, we usually ask this question first, and we failed. What are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking ginger tea.
Ginger
Is that
tea.
boring or what? Ginger tea.
Caffeine?
Ginger tea is great.
No, yes. Is there caffeine in it?
No caffeine. I'm going to sleep after this.
And what time is it there?
It's like 9:30 at night here.
Okay.
It's almost past my bedtime.
Yeah. All right.
Your light makes it look like it's like sunset or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, being a camera guy, it was like I could like change the mood of all this kind of stuff.
It's
Should we go like more warm? Like this is like more warm light.
Yeah.
Go like more like that's more like blue light.
You notice Bill is more red and I'm more blue, so I'm more good and he's more bad, but it's
evil.
not.
Yeah, well, you can see that with just the red lights behind too.
Yeah.
It's always the opposite of what you think.
But it's not. It's not a connotation.
Seems like the angel's usually the devil, and the one that's the devil is usually the nicest guy.
It's true.
So,
it's true.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Might have backfired there. If I had to guess between which one of you was on the dark side, I'd be the one that's trying to pretend he's not.
Oh yeah, it's true. It's true. It's very true. I definitely hold the darkness in my soul, for sure.
You have a tentative grasp on the darkness in your soul.
Yeah. Do you play any games, Todd? Do you prefer Todd or Max?
Max.
Max. Let's invent a game called Max. No, I'm so busy just like editing footage. I play Adobe Premiere. How about that?
Yeah,
I'm always pushing buttons and shuttling forward and shuttling back.
Yeah.
No, not really.
I feel like Adobe Premiere plays me.
I mean, do you? I guess to go back, you've made this documentary on Touch Kink, and I've got a little experience with Kink, not in the sense that it's something that I'm into, but it's something that I've definitely been in the peripheral of. In my filmmaking career, I've worked with Suicide Girls and on a couple of things, and I've worked with, the people who did the Real Doll from like Lars and the Real Doll, and I think that is a world that has a lot of role playing in it, and I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on this show today, is to discuss role playing in that lifestyle, because I think there is a lot of role play, especially from, and you're going to have to define kink for us because, we're gamers. We don't necessarily know what it is. We know.
Let me give you the 30-second there's a house. It's called the House of Kink. Mm-hmm. In this house, there's two big rooms. One room is called fetishism, which is highly sexual. 70%, 80% of people that are into the fetish side, it's about, having sex at some point. The other big house the other big room in the house that is kink is called BDSM, bondage, dominance, discipline, submission, and sadomasochism. That's more about playing with roles. It's more about playing with power, that sort of thing. And that's 80% not about sex. So that's kind of the house that is kink. When you get into things like role play, it depends. I mean, some people would be annoyed if you called it role play because they consider this is who I am. I'm a XYZ. Other people would say it as, yes, I am playing at something. And that can be anything from being a dominant, submissive, to being a furry, to being sissy, to being a slave, to be a million different roles that people will play just to try things on and have fun with them.
I think that a lot of this, I say role play because it is a way to take a shift from their day to day. So maybe it's the truest self, or maybe it's a fantasy, but it's like Superman, he's role playing Clark Kent, that's the human.
Clark Kent role playing Superman.
Yeah, and then Clark Kent, well, he's the alien. He's wearing his clothing his homeworld clothing when he's dressed up like Superman. He's playing a character.
That from Kill Bill.
He's playing his character when he's wearing a suit and tie.
That's true.
But I always think that's like everybody, isn't it? Like, I mean, you could want to dress up in skirts at night, but you still try and go to work as a sort of person that you try to be presentable and fit into the society and the group of the people you're around. Everybody does that, whether you're kinky or not. And the question, we're all kind of trying to fit into a society, and not that many of us fit perfectly into that society. So we're wearing the Clark Kent, continuing the analogy, the Clark Kent sort of rules and the Clark Kent look. But who we really are, that's something that only our dearest friends probably actually know who we really are. So doesn't everybody do that?
You mean wear a suit?
Everybody has the two. Everybody has two sides. Everybody has got two sides. Everybody's Clark Kent by day and Superman by night.
Well, I think the dichotomy, at least the gaming dichotomy that Ken is going for, is that Superman's the only superhero that is literally just himself, rather than masquerading as someone to do good things. And when you get into that, I know this is not exactly what you're talking about, Max, but the point being that superheroes dress up, hide themselves. Why are they doing that? And then they go and do quote unquote good things. And those are adventure stories, and those are the lives they really want. Superman doesn't do that. Superman's the opposite of that. In fact, he takes off the mask to then be who he really is. And those are the good things in the adventure. Right.
He's code switching, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, he's literally...
I've never thought of it that way. That's cool. Yeah, I mean...
He's literally dressing up for our safety. And then when he's... And who is he really? And this is all from Kill Bill Volume 2. And so this is just out of the mouth of Quentin Tarantino. Or actually David Carradine at the time.
Yeah.
He's got a whole monologue about why Superman is his favorite superhero. And it's pretty compelling.
That is really interesting. I never thought about that before. You're right. I mean, yeah, he's putting on a costume to, What else is that? Yeah, I guess not.
But it goes further. So Superman is an alien, like Ken was saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's an alien, and so when he dresses up in a suit and a tie and the glasses and everything, he's attempting to look like us, meaning an alien looking at us and being like, oh, that's what you look like. And then what are the qualities of Clark Kent? And that is when you get into an interesting idea.
Interesting.
So, it's just kind of like I wanted to respond to like role playing and from the outside, role playing in Kink, where you were saying that people feel most at home when they're and they feel the most themselves when they're participating in that action is what I'm kind of curious about.
I think it's even more simple than that. It's just hanging out with the people that you can have those conversations with. It's not necessarily actually doing anything. It's just feeling like you're in an environment where you're not being judged, where you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, and nobody's going to go, you just said what? Oh my goodness, what horrors. I don't really particularly enjoy hanging out with people that are not at least kink informed anymore, because I'm always a little worried I might step in something. And they'll take something too seriously. And if I say something stupid, they're not going to give me a chance to maybe clarify or adjust. They're just going to go, oh my God, you just said that.
Yeah. So it's about knowing the rules
around kink.
Yeah. It's knowing the rules. Yeah. There are rules to it.
Right.
Can you enlighten us to some of those rules?
Well, rule number 1 is thou shalt not make fun of anybody else's kink. You're perfectly fine to say, it's not my thing. It's your thing, but that's okay. I'm not, I don't want to talk about that particular kink, but I'm not going to say you're a crazy person unless you're violating people's consent. That's about the only taboo, is to do something against someone's will. If it's, you've got somebody and you like to go hang out and do X, Y, Z, and to me, that's a bit frightening, but you guys have agreed to do it. Okay, cool. Not maybe something I want to talk about, but I'm not going to tell you you're wrong or that that's a dangerous thing or a crazy thing. So rule number one, I think, is just being open-minded and trying not to project your own judgments on people, to try and, get to know. So it gives people that space to talk about some of the things that are a little out there. So that's probably rule one. Two is generally understanding that if you do decide to do something, there's clear consent. You're going to tie somebody up to the railway tracks or something, and you're going to do it this time, and both people are agreeing to this, and hopefully you've checked the train schedule, and but you've both consented and going to do this action. That's important. And then once you've done the action,
we don't have trains in the U.S., dude. It's
trains, Amtrak. I heard the Biden take Amtrak every day from wherever to wherever, from Scranton to I don't know.
Yeah, I got stopped by a train, like a cargo train, and had to drive around because they stopped on the tracks in front of where I was trying to go from one place to another.
You're trying to go to the bar, weren't you?
Yeah. I know you're trying to get to the right place.
I used to count train cars when I was a kid. It's amazing how big some of these things are. They don't have to stop. You're still waiting half an hour.
What's rule number 3?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, is the rule number 2 is, do you know X-Card? Do you know X-Card?
Oh.
Before we get to rule number...
It's in gaming. It's a gaming thing.
No, but I have a feeling my next movie is going to be about the intersection of gaming and kink. Sounds like there's lots of crossover. You guys are actually all kinksters, and you just don't know it. Your kink is gaming. That's it.
The kink in gaming goes really deep. That's actually a super thing. But the X card is basically, and please correct me when I'm wrong, Bill, but it's basically you hand out. It's a card that I think that has like a list of the things that is too much for you, or like it's discussed beforehand, or maybe it's not a physical card. Am I correct?
No, it is a physical card.
It is a physical card. Oh, it's a card that you hold up. Yeah. It's like your safe word.
Nothing's written on it but an X.
Yeah. It's like you're talking about doing
it's
something.
Like the Overton window.
Yeah.
The Overton, your gaming version of the Overton window.
Nice reference. Cool. That's cool.
And then when and for instance, if you're in the BDSM world and you're kind of tied down, strapped in, and you can't say anything,
you don't have hands to.
How do you give an X card in that situation?
Well, hopefully you've negotiated and had your, you figured that out. For some people, the safe word is just a. They'll do something like, shake your head 3 times like this or like that, whatever you can do, or like, or something like that. You don't always have to say stop or pineapple or red or whatever. No. You can safe word out in other ways.
And let's get to the third. What is the third before we go into more detail?
The third is just, and even kinky people forget sometimes, is aftercare. Is just once you've gone and done, even though you've talked about this, even though you've agreed to this, even though you've done this thing, to still follow up with the person. Go, was that too much? Was it not enough? What worked? What didn't work? And just finish out that circle. And that's the difference between anything that's sort of healthy, kinky stuff and abuse. Is if I slap someone across the face without getting their consent and knowing what their aftercare looks like, that's abuse. If they want that, they've agreed to that, and we're going to do that, and then afterwards we're going to talk about it, or aftercare could be a whole bunch of different things, but whatever that person needs after that experience, you take care of all those things, and then you complete this circle, and you can go back to the beginning. And that's what it is to be able to care for that person by completing that circle. Aftercare is the last step of the circle before you start over back to hello again. So what are we going to do now?
We did a podcast after hours for a while, and I think the aftercare was getting pretty brutal. And so we stopped doing it. We decided to kind of like let the aftercare go a little bit, because we would definitely dissent a little bit. But I think that's an interesting commentary of why maybe we should bring back an after hours and to some of the stuff that we're doing, because we deal with a lot of topics that are difficult.
Absolutely.
Is there are there difficult? How do you go about sort of getting into it? Like, if and I've dated a few doms, and we were never like, I dated somebody who did some dominatrix stuff in Germany. She was from Germany, and she was super cool, and a few. I'm not going to out anybody for that, but just in my history and past, and they were never dominant with me. I only presumed that it was because I never asked for it, or I don't know why. That was just not
very dom, is it?
Yeah, but they were a dom in their day,
Dom day.
I think it's just people, just because you know something, you might know everything there's to know about computers, but if we don't talk about computers, you're probably not going to tell me about the computers. If I ask you, hey, how do I connect a computer to this, that, the other thing? Oh, well, let me tell you, or you express an interest, just because, and we all have multiple interests. And I suspect if you're a professional, I don't know if they're professional dom or they're like a lifestyle dom, but professional dom, it's probably like, do you really want to talk about work anyway?
Right. And it was kind of that experience that I had. I think you really nailed it. That was work. And it was different than the relationship and experience that we had. I felt like that was it was just confusing.
Everybody has two sides.
Yeah. Right.
Everybody has two sides. Sometimes, if maybe all day being dominant to somebody, she actually wants to be a little submissive to balance herself out. I mean, it's very common, like, you hear these top tier generals and stuff go to a dominatrix, dress up as a little baby and have a bottle stuck in their mouth. I mean, it balances out the decisions they had to make in the day to send men off to die.
Like
It's like we're humans. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, we all have two sides to ourselves, and if we try and be one thing all the time, I think we'll go crazy. I think we need to balance that out. So maybe she was happy that you didn't want to talk, but happy just to be a person, not a dominatrix, when she was with you.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
Maybe you're lying and really not telling us the truth, but hey.
It's true. I mean,
Yeah, I get the whole pretending to be an angel thing. I don't know. I'm not buying it, actually. I'm not buying it. I think you... Okay, I'm not going to judge, you don't have to share either.
I've been into industrial music. I mean, my first experience with Kink was 9 Inch Nails, in the 90s, and I really dug it. I mean, I love the music. I mean, I'm going to an industrial show this weekend in a nearby city, and all the time, especially when I lived in LA, is they would have those big things, and they would strap people on it, and they would do this stuff in public. It seemed like it was mostly BDSM kind of stuff, but I mean, even to sex acts on a stage where people are fully having intercourse, and it's just really interesting that the nature of what people are into. I didn't connect with it, but clearly I was in the space. It was too much for me sometimes. It's like
it wasn't so much that you didn't go.
Yeah,
I mean, in the end, I think one of the biggest myths about kink is that somehow it's this other thing. It's just human behavior. We can take as much as we can take. We're interested in as much as we're interested. You were obviously interested enough to go to the concert and remember it. You just weren't interested enough to get more actively involved, or there were some things that were a little farther than you were at that time. Now, today you might want to go farther, or you might not even want to go as far as you did then. But we're all fluid human beings, and everything kind of is like that. And it depends on who you're with and the mood you're in, and all it is I mean, there's always a power play. Every situation you ever deal with, every boss, every employee, every situation, somebody's got a little more power than the other. That's normal. There's always something that attracts you. There's always something that really kind of turns you on. Well, that, for lack of a better word, is a fetish. Just because you happen to maybe like boobs or something, well, that's a fetish. Just might be a common one. We all of these fetishes and playing with power and playing with roles, we're doing this all the time. Everyone is, whether they realize it or not. The only difference between a kinky person and a non-kinky person is a kinky person is dissecting it a bit more. They're looking at, why am I doing this? Why is my, what is this dynamic? They're more conscious of something that's going on all the time, but none of this stuff is in a vacuum. Kink is everywhere all the time because we're all attracted to something. It turns us on, right? Every one of us has got something, right? Every one of us has a role. Sometimes we see ourselves as a certain kind of person. That's probably not static. It's not going to stay that way through your whole life. So everybody's a role: more dominant, more submissive, more in the middle, more exploratory, more participatory, more voyeuristic. Everyone's got that, and we're all looking for a sensation. We want either classic orgasm, but some people want to just have a good job, good boy. Some people want to be taken down a notch. Maybe their jobs are so stressful they want to be told that they're stupid idiots with small penises. They want that humiliation. That's it. We like what we like. We feel like we feel. We want a certain sensation. That is everything, and that is kink. I mean, that's everything all the time. How far you go with those things. At what point does it become kink? I mean, bondage, everybody's done at least the fuzzy handcuffs at this point. So technically bondage is no longer kinky because it's actually a majority thing. DS, dominance, submissive, well, everybody's playing these games whether they do it or not. So technically there's really actually nothing in the whole kink spectrum, which is supposed to be a minority sexual interest, that is actually a minority. Everybody's doing all this stuff. It's just whether you're doing it consciously or not. We all have a fluidity.
And just one more follow up. So, and there's also a difference when you're at home in a private space, or if you're on a stage performance that has a vibe and they're performing for an audience, and even a difference entirely when it's like a porno shoot. I've been on a couple of porn sets. I have some friends that work in the industry in LA. And they were like, it's interesting the dynamic and the conversations that happen before and after, and having to direct this stuff. And they call a lot of that stuff documentaries, where you call this a documentary. Is it a documentary on the behind the scenes of the Touch Kink documentary that you made? Is that is it kind of a behind the scenes experience of what they're talking about, or is it a more of alt porn kind of concept?
Well, for me, it was just a journey of talking to the people that I met and filming what they did, when they gave me access to their lives. And over the course of the year, a few people had dramatic things happen that I featured just to sort of show them as humans. The biggest point of the documentary for me was to give people a peek behind the curtain of what some kinky people, how they live and the challenges they face and what they get out of it. There's no end all and be all. I'm not trying to make the definitive documentary explaining kink. I think that would be an impossible thing to do. It was just an honest and sincere look at people's lives that are interested in this, and you got to see what they're interested in. But, if you wanted to do the whole encyclopedia of kink, I would need about 10,000 hours of filming. That answers the question you were asking.
Yeah, we're just blowing up the internet with all this.
No, it's good.
Blowing up the internet. That's good. Excellent. That's always
dude.
fun.
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting take, and that's a really good explanation. I live in LA, and it's a little bit less conservative than Kentucky, if you can imagine. Have you been to LA before?
Yeah, I've worked in LA many times.
I'd like to actually get a little bit into that and your introduction into kink and all that, and kind of maybe not your personal story if you don't want to share it, but I'm actually interested in it. What I was going to say prior to that, though, was I've encountered a lot of people that are in that community, in the swinging community, BDSM, just kink in general. And of all adult ages. So, people that are much younger, but actually most of the people that I've encountered that are like in the lifestyle of kink are actually much older than me, like 60s and up.
When we were talking about the house that is kink, the house that's kink, remember? The two big houses, one BDSM house, that is still occupied a lot by older people, more traditional, old guard, leather guard. There's younger people coming in, but it's more traditional. The other side of the house, the fetish side of the house, there's very few people under 40 or over 40. It's very much like go to the wild parties, wear latex, do fun stuff. So I know how it can seem that way, that sometimes certain groups are older than others, but it's just different groups prefer different activities, and different groups gravitate a little towards certain things. Well, the youngest, hottest things right now is Shibari. I don't think anybody's over 35 in Shibari. There's like a million dojos setting up where people just go and they tie each other up, and it's pretty much super body positive. I always feel it's like I don't think there's that many people over 40 that are into that. So the latex thing, there's huge latex parties. Dress up. Those are always younger people too. You go to a torture garden. I mean, yeah. So I think it depends on which area of kink you're in. If you made a car analogy, it'd be like, the people going to the Tesla conventions as opposed to people going to the Model T conventions. They're both cars, but you can, the old hot rods that my grandfather would love would be a different gang of people showing off the hot rods than people showing off their new, electric cars.
So within, all right. Well, my follow-up question, which I think I'm gonna let Ken run with it if he wishes to. The idea of within the kink community. I mean, you've already stated that everyone does kink all the time. It's almost a lens you can look at life with, which I can argue with, but I won't.
Please do. I'd love to.
I'm more interested in this with the kink community. I'm interested also in the levels, like for example, the punk community. Okay. My punk friends would never call me punk. They'd be like, "You're a poser, dude." So you have that kind of,
you're not punk.
There's positivity. There's also negativity. It's always, well, you don't do this. Well, you're not OG, whatever. I'm interested in that sort of, those dichotomies within the kink community. The tea, the bullshit.
Oh,
and I'm also interested in your introduction into it.
Absolutely. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's 1,000 different communities that all figure that they've got it right and everybody else is doing it wrong. There's literally like Christian kink, where God somehow gave men the right to tie up and make the women submissive. And that's they truly believe that this, and everybody, they don't actually consider themselves kinky at all. This is it's just the way it's supposed to be.
I live in the Bible Belt, and I think the Christians, having, and I know that Bill has experienced this, the amount of sexuality and depravity that rumors around a Christian Baptist area is real. That stuff is I'm not to interrupt you. I totally interrupted you. I'm bad.
I'm going to totally get myself into trouble again. If you actually think about what a Dom does, Dom's supposed to make you behave a certain way, do things, and basically make you jump through a lot of hoops and not really do anything. Or doesn't God make everyone look like amateurs when it comes to, he doesn't even the ultimate Dom. He's got groups of people worship. I know I'm in trouble for that one, but it's like, wow. I mean,
listen, dude, he sent his only son. Okay.
Yeah. Strapped him right up on that big old wooden cross.
But he had to be punished first.
Oh yeah, they needed that whip.
Oh my God. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's
the rituals,
right there.
The rituals of the church. It's amazing. The ceremonies, the rituals. This is all like a lot of
we
the
could
whole
go
thing.
So
it's ritual.
Sure.
You worship certain ways. You wear certain things. You say certain things. All these rituals are designed to keep you, in your place, and most people do that quite willingly. Mm-hmm. And that's why like in the DS level, 95% of people are submissive or submissive leaning, which is why the world works. If everyone was a Dom, we'd be in a constant state of war.
Yeah, and it's weird when some of the Doms that I knew, they definitely wanted to be submissive around me. That was a thing that I experienced, and I was like, okay. I feel like I'm talking more about my personal life experience than I expected.
Please do, Ken.
But yeah, I mean, there's been where they've spent time being dominant. And I'm not referring to this is old history. This is not my current relationship.
Disclaimers.
Disclaimer, just like, but I mean, there's a yin and yang to everything. You can't be all one thing. So yeah, if you're being dom by day, maybe you want to be sub by night. Balances you out. It's exhausting to be one thing all the time. And there's a dynamic always, because if you put 20 slave or submissive people in a room, eventually a hierarchy would emerge. There'd be one a little more dominant than the others, even though they all identify as submissives. Eventually, you put them there, somebody's going to say, okay, we have to do something. And that would be the most dominant of the submissive people.
And how do you work that out? I mean, how would you imagine, what have you seen or experienced? How do you work out that hierarchy?
The same thing. If you've ever played sports or on a team, it just, these things just emerge. There's just somebody who becomes a little bit more, okay, we're going to do it this way. Like maybe they try and bite their tongue for as long as possible, but they see enough stuff that drives them crazy. They say, okay, all right, here's what we're going to do. It's just a natural thing in human behavior. We in a group of people, somebody emerges as kind of the alpha of the pack. And if it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who would have been alpha in any other pack. And also you could get situations where a whole bunch of alphas together, but there's someone who's even more of an alpha. It's just the way it works in natural groups of people. There's always one, and it may shift also. It could be one, okay, I'm the alpha for hunting, but you're the alpha for breeding. Actually, I want to be the one for breeding, but what? There's a shared responsibility. Maybe one person's particular good at one thing, so they're the alpha in that scenario, and somebody else might be the alpha in different scenarios. But it's just a natural human thing that always happens.
So, tell us a little bit about how you got into it and what you've done with Kink as well.
I was just a weird kid that grew up in a very small town, and I was mildly suicidal until I left and started traveling. So I grew up in this town, and I knew what the rules were, and I hated them, and I just felt there must be a world bigger than this. There must be people that think different than this, and there must be other things. When I started traveling, I found that to be true, that there's a whole bunch of different ways people live and a whole bunch of different societies and cultural values, and I feel like I could breathe again. And, I was always very aware and very concerned about consent and wanting to be, the modern man, about being, very politically correct at the same time. But the things that I enjoyed in my private life were more primal, more, old fashioned. So I found myself at a very early age having conversations about this. I like X, I like Y, I like Z. Is that cool for you? And to my amazement, most women were quite up for it and appreciated the fact that we had those conversations. I didn't know that was kinky, or I didn't know that was would fall under the house that Kink made at the time. And then later just reading books. I think a girlfriend pointed it out to me, actually. Oh, you're a dom. Oh, what's that? It was just who I was, and I just gravitated that way, frankly, because I like doing oddier things. I like doing more edgier things, and I didn't want to go to jail or have people running in fear. So I talked about these things, and people that were cool with it, we did stuff, and people that weren't, we didn't. So I was kinky and into BDSM before I knew what that was. And that all that being kinky and BDSM did is inform me and give me a language, and realize that I wasn't as unusual as I thought. I met literally thousands of people that think in a similar way now, but at the time I didn't know. I thought I was just that one weird kid who went off and traveled the world and did his own thing and couldn't figure out why everyone else wasn't just doing their own thing.
Do you think that
go on.
I was just gonna say this kind of my question is going to open up a whole thing, but it relates to what you were saying, where you made the choice to do a thing and kind of listen to your heart. Do you think that a lot of societal problems maybe come from, religious, canceling that stuff out, saying that, oh no, you can't have sex before marriage, or oh no, like women need to be in masks, or even more Americana, where J. Edgar Hoover would create these here in America, was closeted probably and dressed up in women's clothing and had kinks of his own, but really did a lot to the LGBT community here that was very hurtful and cruel, just like Karl Rove or Lindsey Graham. They're politicians here in the States. They have created these brutal or harmful policies, but a lot of their staff are gay. There are rumors that they're gay. And a lot of their staff has been outed as being gay or in the LGBTQ community. Do you think that there is a violence issue associated with people who are not allowed to accept themselves?
Absolutely. I think, it's certainly when you're younger and more impressionable and society is telling you, thou shalt not do this, don't do it, these are bad people, that's of course going to be harmful. If you don't have I was lucky enough that I was dominant enough that I said, fuck it, I'm just going to leave the country and go do what I want. But if I was somebody that really felt like I had to stay in my little town, I probably would have offed myself a long time ago, because everything, all the input I was getting was you're weird, you're whatever, you can't fit in. So for sure.
Can I hold you there? After this last election, and Bill's going to persecute me for saying this, but I have a lot of friends in the trans and gay community, LGBTQ community, that have suggested that they're going to leave the country because of what's happened. I being kind of, I've noticed a change, and the freedom is much more than it was in the 80s and when I first started becoming aware of this stuff. But if you were suggesting that you would, if you didn't do what you needed to do, that suicide was an option, I feel like that is something that you've definitely that is a choice. And can you elaborate on maybe some of the things you did to get past that or to what did you do?
I was lucky enough to get a student exchange to go live in Europe at 17, and that was it. I was been happy ever since, and I traveled for 20 some odd years of my life. I lived on the road, and I was just lucky enough to get a chance. I don't know how things would have gone if I didn't have that chance. Just having a break. Maybe it's a little easier in some respects. I didn't have a community. I didn't have anybody I could talk to about this. Everybody else, that I knew was quote unquote normal people. They were people that, fit in. I was the one being bullied. I was the one that just didn't fit in. So maybe if I'd had friends like myself, maybe that would have been better. Maybe the fact that people do talk about these things now, that there are, there's a Facebook for kinky people called FetLife, which is 18 million American users on it. So, 10% of the population is not only kinky, they're online with pictures. You can find your community now. And so I think that maybe makes it easier for people as well. But I think we all deal with these things, definitely. But to talk about hypocrisy, about having the top leaders of the country sort of, trying to make you feel bad about something they probably are doing themselves, that's been going on for a long time. And unfortunately, I think it's just the nature of politics. The most important thing for a politician is to get elected. So you just say whatever you need to say to do it. Whether you believe it or not, we only find out later.
Yeah, our POTUS-elect has been accused of 26 sex crimes. He just appointed a guy who's under investigation for sex trafficking and hooking up with underage girls. Yet these are the same people who push this kind of agenda that kink is bad, that expressing yourself and feeling that your choices are bad, to the point of people shooting up that guy shooting up the Pulse nightclub where 50 people died, 49 people died because he was rejected sexually or for who knows what fucking reason that he was, or the guy showing up in a pizza shop in Chicago, or with conspiracy theory and not jobbery, or that drags are grooming children when they read them stories instead of maybe possibly the acceptance of alternative lifestyles. I mean, all I'm saying is that I think that is it's something that leads to violence or suicide or
Absolutely.
not embracing.
Absolutely, we need to have a society that's more diverse and more open. And it's not even the thing that I think some conservative people are starting to realize. I'm hoping, I've had this argument, this debate, is that diversity isn't a bad thing. In fact, the future, the country that's the most diverse is going to have the best ideas, the best creative, and the wars of the future, conflicts of the future, challenges of the future are going to be solved with those with good ideas. And do yourself a history lesson. Find out who invented the computer. Find out the history of Da Vinci. Find out the history of pretty much every major invention in the history of the world was invented by somebody that was gently was an outsider who was you could call kinky. Da Vinci was arrested for crimes against nature. Alan Turing, inventor of the computer, was a homosexual with BDSM tendencies.
They made a movie.
Could do it. Exactly. I mean, if anything, conservative people start realizing it's not all bad letting people fly their flags, because those people are going to be creative and those people are going to invent the future. It's not going to be won by authoritarian regimes that everyone has to think exactly the same. It's going to be won by countries that figure out how to make drones out of dishwashers. That's so creativity is actually also something conservative, or diversity is something conservatives should get behind if they're thinking about the future and how to solve to win the future. So it's not just people should get to be who they are. It's also really fucking smart to let people be.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
That was pretty much that.
Well, I disagree with everything you guys just said, so
okay.
No, yeah, there's some. I just had a dumb anecdote. So my brother's left-handed, and there's apparently a whole study. Are you left-handed, Ken?
Yeah, I'm left-handed.
Fucking degenerate. Yeah. So there's some study.
Devil was left-handed.
Did you know? Okay. Are you left-handed, Max? You guys. Okay. So ambidextrous, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
What does ambidextrous mean?
It's a stripper I met in Vegas, I thought. Ambidextrous?
Ambidextrous. Oh, that's a good name.
That's awesome.
She was great.
That's pretty good.
I loved her. She was like my favorite stripper. Yeah. No?
So,
maybe something.
What does ambidextrous mean?
Both hands.
You can use both arms.
Both hands, right? Isn't that a thing? Dex is like 10 or whatever, and if amber is like Latin.
No, dexterity
something.
is using your hands.
Oh yeah,
right. I mean, we use it for a lot of different things, kind of not really incorrectly, but dexterity has to do with hand manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
And ambi means both, like ambulatory, like you can move, right?
Sure.
So you have both hands, command of both hands, right? Actually, that's not what it means. Dextere means right-handed. Ambidextrous means you have two right hands.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice.
Do you know what the word is for left-handed? Don't look it up yet, Ken.
No, I was just, I don't.
It's the devil. It's sinister.
Yeah, it is sinister. No, I've known that. I've known that. I don't have to look that up. I was looking
Isn't
up.
that cool?
Ambidextrous.
I love that. That's pretty cool. That's cool.
Sinistre or sinistre is
sure.
left-handed.
For sure.
What the fuck? So there's this whole. I'm into this kind of shit because when I was a kid, I looked up to my older brother. I still do, and I wanted to be everything that he did. So I wanted to be left-handed. I was like, oh my god, and I'd see people that are left-handed. You sons of bitches, and I always wanted to be that way. And my brother would be like, nah, dude. The desk, all the desks have a little thing that come around this way.
Yeah, it sucks.
And there's the one that comes around this way. He's like, you write weird. It gets all over everything.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's this study, or several studies, or whatever. We can look it up. Can't name one of them, where they were like, so what's the deal? Why are humans left or right-handed? Because animals aren't. Most animals don't have this. So why are humans?
No, I'm sure they are animals. Look at
supposedly. I mean,
Well, do you know that you're right-eared, left-eared, you're right-eyed or left-eyed? Do you know you're right-footed, left-footed? Every part of your body has a preference to start. Like you stand and you take a step forward, whatever foot goes out first is your dominant leg. If you got a speaker in front of you and someone's whispering, you're going to turn one ear or the other.
Yeah.
Now, we all have those preferences. I'm sure animals do too. No?
Supposedly. Now, again, all right. We will look it up. Supposedly, animals don't have a preference for it.
Okay.
Now, the question being, why do we? I mean, even if animals did, I mean, we're animals. Why do we have preferences that way? And why is it always right-handed when we're talking about handedness? Yes, because society wants right-handed. Yeah, but there's an idea of like most people are right-handed. It's just a preference. Babies will start using their right hand. So why left-handed? Why would you ever have a left-handed person? And the study has an idea about it. It throws things off, and that is good.
Okay.
It's actually extremely good to have that one person who comes in. It's like 13% or 18% or whatever it is. The pitcher who throws left-handed strikes everybody out. Why? Because it's just different. The fighter who throws left, it's an evolutionary
advantage.
It's an advantage.
I definitely did better in baseball when I played baseball. It's funny that I did play baseball, but when I played,
fact check everything I just said.
Yeah,
I want to Google horses. I'm sure when horses take off, they always take off with one leg first.
We're gonna find out. Ken.
No, I was just gonna say, like, my experience as a left-hander in baseball is like they liked me. I mean, I threw everything off when I went to bat, and my coach would call me up every year and say, make sure that I was playing in the team. This is only little league or whatever, but it was an asset. For sure. It's the only time where I can safely say that somebody cared about me being left-handed, whereas most of the time it sucked. And I'm sure you had that experience where the whole world, I mean, I caught scissors with my right hand because there were no left-handed scissors. I don't play golf because golf sucks.
Golf sucks.
But also because, I couldn't swing, and my video is reversed. So I guess it would be this. I couldn't swing right-handed,
So check this shit out.
When you did swing, you weren't submissive.
AI says, so there's two factions here. AI says, yes, some animals are right-handed, and many animals show a preference for using one side of their body over the other. This is called behavior or motor laterality. Here are some examples that show handedness. Blue whales, octopuses, dogs, and tree frogs. All right, it says, in general, limb preferences are the rule rather than the exception in the animal kingdom. So I'd be wrong. In fact, sidedness has been found in all vertebrate groups that have been studied, including horses, cats, rodents, reptiles, and different fish species. Now, keep going. And it says about 3/4 of cats demonstrate a paw preference, while just under 70% of dogs exhibit this trait. Unlike humans, there does not seem to be a preference for right-handedness. Cats and dogs are equally right or left-pawed. However, female cats seem to be more commonly right-handed than male cats. So I'm only halfway right. What we can take from this: 1, fact check. 2, the idea of why are humans right-handed more so than left-handed.
But
what's with that?
Also, I'm right-footed.
I think that's actually the...
And soccer, I mean, I kick with my right leg and not my left leg. Does that count?
I would argue that we've been trained that way. That perhaps there's this thought of epigenetics, this thought of like certain behaviors we actually pass down. And if we lived in a right-hand world and most of us functioned that way, there's when you go, if you've ever been in a medieval castle, the stair always goes a certain way. And the reason it goes a certain way is they assumed everyone was right-handed. You could defend from the top. So it was much harder to attack as you're going up because everybody was right-handed. So there's a lot of things in the past why, different behaviors that we've learned and manners we've learned is right. So maybe it's just passed on. Maybe if
that's interesting.
Society, I mean, you look at talk about sexuality. The Romans were more bisexual than we are now,
right?
Because that was the society. It was far more acceptable. It wasn't seen as unusual. In fact,
you had a butt boy.
The Greeks or the Romans say that men are for love, women are for babies, or something. It's so obviously now we're in a society that's more straight. But why? Maybe that's just culture putting that stuff on us.
I would imagine
our nature. We're adaptation machines.
Yeah, if you were a Roman soldier, you had the shield in one hand and the sword in the other, and you had, like, they did the phalanx or whatever, and you had to have it in that way, because if it was alternative, it wouldn't be uniform on the way they fought battles. You always had to hold the shield, I think, with your left hand and swipe with your right.
I think my grandfather told me that he actually was left-handed, but they tied his hand behind his back to make him right-handed.
Yeah,
when he was a kid.
They did some cruel shit.
That was there was a thing where they would just think, I think they were thinking, most of the evil in the world isn't done by evil people. It's done by ignorance and stupid people. They thought they were doing them a favor. Hey, you're entering a right-handed world. We're going to help you out here. Some people might have thought it was the devil, but most things people think they're helping out. Oh, we're going to make it so you don't have to worry about that weird desk in school,
So I wanted to circle back, and I also want to talk about your movie, your documentary.
Oh yeah,
because that's right. What you're pushing on, and pushing forward in the next year and everything. But you'd mentioned the idea of the rules in the house of Kink. So I'm wondering, one, does the House of Kink, is that something you've come up with? Is that a book? Is it?
No, I've just been explaining it a lot, and what'll happen, even when I'm talking to the Kink community, especially sometimes when I'm talking in the Kink community, they're referencing their room in the house that is Kink. So they'll say stuff like, "Oh, it's not about sex; it's about power and about protocol and leather." And says, "Yeah, okay, that I get that. That's in the BDSM house, but I go to a latex kink event. Believe me, a lot of sex, with a little bit of BDSM. So it's really just something that I come up with when I'm talking to people that are kinky, because they have a tendency to view the world as you view. I'm kinky, and for me, kinky is leather and masters and slaves and tying people up, and that's kinky. Everything else is something else. Where you go to the house that is fetishism, and being kinky is dressing up in latex and doing crazy shows, probably more the kind of stuff you saw on stage, and probably shagging in the end of it. They're both right. They're both live in the house that's kink, but they're in different rooms.
That's the book you write. I'm pretty sure, The House That Is Kink. I think it'd sell really well. Okay, so the rules. If someone's like rule, I think you said rule number 1. I'm not good with rules.
I think rule 1 was don't disparage, right?
Yeah, don't disparage other people's kink. Now, I don't entirely understand that. So
it's because you like to disparage everybody generally.
Well, I like to be critical. So can you clarify, for example, can you clarify what that means?
There's a difference between having a conversation and disparaging. If you say to me that I like XYZ, and I say you're a fucking freak, I'm never going to talk to you again, that's not really cool. Or if I go, XY, but if it is, then you got exactly what you wanted, now I feel violated. My consent was violated because I got into a scene without actually knowing I was participating. But to go, okay, XYZ is not really my thing, isn't that a bit dangerous, actually? Or isn't that a little unhealthy? Or that's fine. You can have conversations about it. Doesn't mean I have to universally accept what you're saying. But it's just that I'm not going to say, oh my God, you're a freak, run away. I'm just going to say, if I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to talk about this. It's not really, I'm not comfortable with talking about this particular thing.
And so you don't.
Speed.
So, which of course, that's just getting along with people. I understand that.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's basic stuff.
What I find in the conversations I have with Well, my roommates, is that they're very knowledgeable. You know, some of them are very academic. Some of them have been in the community for a while, and the circles they're in, and the conversations I've had within those circles when I'm sort of in that arena. I know I'm being vague, but I'm being vague on purpose. What it comes off to me is this. It's like when I talk to someone and they're like, everything is okay and you can't say otherwise. Because if you say otherwise, then I'm offended. And you can't do that. And then in the same breath, they'll say, yeah, but not everything's for everyone. And you have to respect everyone. And it starts to be a circular, it sounds
that's
like
going
a circular
too far.
logic.
That's going too far. I consider myself fairly middle of the road politically, but I think when you get to I speak the truth, and if you don't follow the rules as I follow them, and shut down people because they don't follow the rules you perceive, then I don't think that's the house that Kink made. I think that's an extreme situation where it's like, you must always refer this way or that way. I mean, you can choose again to participate or not, but if someone goes down your throat, who jumps down your throat because you forget a pronoun, or you make a flub up about something as people are sensitive of, and they really want to make a big deal of it, I don't want to play with those people, because I'm not an evil part. I'm not, I always catch myself. I just say, hey guys, to everybody, and sometimes you're talking to transgender people, and you're like, oh, I hope they don't think I was trying to I wasn't, you know what I mean? Catch my, exactly. And if they think
like,
that,
dude,
I'm sorry, that was not my heart. It was not in my heart to do that, But if you want to jump down my throat thinking it was, okay, I get it. It's hard. You're hyper political about this, but I just wish we'd all sit down and listen to each other a little bit more. I think, people can learn from each other, but what's happening is once you find your community, once you find your XYZ community, and you fought really hard to be part of that community, I get you want to put up a wall around it, make rules, and keep everybody out. And if they don't, I get that's a natural human tribal kind of thing to do. Countries do that. I mean, we've got our rules, we're right, everybody else is wrong. Now we're going to do everything we can to institutionalize that. It's a normal thing that people do. And when sub-communities set up, they try and sort of institutionalize. So yeah, you can't say this, you can't say that, we don't have to listen to you if you're speaking with that tone of voice, or because you're this or that, you don't know the exact lingo around our community, that you're not labeling us correctly, and therefore, I think that's going too far. I understand where it comes from a person that, a queer person, that what that means for me is maybe different from what it means for other people, but I get it. I needed to figure out what that was, and how I thought about myself. And once I did, life became a little easier, and maybe it would be nice to have that community, but I think you got to keep traveling. You got to keep meeting other people and exchanging ideas. You can't, I think Socrates said something along the lines that the only true knowledge is that nothing is truly knowable, which leaves us with a lot of opinions. I can have a strong opinion this way or that, but I will listen to you, and I will be willing to let you change my opinion. Or if I say to you, no matter what, you're always wrong about this, there's no conversations with those people. You can have a strong opinion, but if you're really not going to be, no one could change your opinion in any way, shape, or form in any way, then I don't think we're having a useful conversation.
Right.
I think you said a lot when you said listening. I really do. I think like that is, it sounds like the most important thing, or what, I mean, I feel like it's definitely should be a rule, in Kink, is you got to listen to the other people.
That's negotiation, listening with an open heart, listening with an open mind.
Right. But then
that's the way it should be done. But hey, don't get me wrong. Just because you're kinky doesn't mean you're somehow magically better. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of kinky people that are horrible at this stuff. If you've encountered groups that will tell you, no, this is the rule. If you don't interact in this way, you're doing it wrong. I don't. I don't support that. I don't think that's healthy.
Well,
you can have strong opinions.
It's shutting people down. Like there's
exactly.
a
Unless
point
they think
and
like
a line
you think.
and a safe space that you have for yourself. I'm sure that you've created, and when they've crossed that, that's when you're nowhere. That's when it's over. You move on, I guess.
Yeah. I just think sometimes these things become like, self-supporting echo chambers where, you think you're right because everyone you talk to agrees with you, and they all just so busy agreeing with each other that somehow reinforces this narrative that they found the one true way and everybody else is wrong unless they agree with them. It doesn't have to be that way. You can be the kinkiest, wildest, craziest person, but you can also be up for some frank discussions as to maybe why you're deluded, why maybe you have some other issue. And I think those things are healthy.
That's something that I've noticed. No, I wouldn't style myself as a kinky person, although, as you've already stated, kink is kind of everywhere, right?
Sure.
That said, I have a lot of people in my arena that are actually more and more and more. And what I've noticed, I think majority-wise, now granted, I'm not in the room when they're doing whatever they do, and I don't know their hearts. What I've noticed, the majority of them, they're just kind of doing their thing. It's something they do. I like soda water. They like kink, right? But some of them, and I see this in other things as well, so I'm not going to go too much into disclaimers here. Some of them, it seems like there's a toxic nature to this kink, meaning they've got a real big problem, for example, with making decisions. And so then they become a little. From what I understand, a little is someone who acts like a baby. I don't know. I would love you to tell me.
Little as anybody younger. You could be acting like you're 12. It doesn't really matter. It's basically being childlike again, where you color, you're spending your time coloring, playing with teddy bears. It's like a regression thing. A lot of this stuff is, again, stress release. I think that's a very good one for if you have a high pressure job and a million miles just sort of go back and color, do coloring books and talk to each other like children and channeling that thing again can be very healthy.
Or like doms becoming submissive, in their spare time.
Absolutely. One of the reasons people like to be tied up that I've heard from guys that really love to be tied up and for restricted, it's a vacation for them because they're such active people that they have a million things fun. They can only relax when they literally can't move or talk. It's the only time they can actually truly relax. So tying up someone in a leather body bag, suspending them so they can't move or touch is a vacation for them. So you don't know. That's the biggest myth about kink, I think, is that you think you have it figured out. Believe me, you don't. You walk into a room and say you see 12 people getting spanked. And you think, oh, I guess people like to be spanked. I can guarantee every single one of those people is having a unique experience that will blow your mind. It might be somebody might be having a cathartic experience. Somebody might be having an orgasmic experience. Some people might be feeling pain. Somebody dom might be having their submissive spank them because they want to have a little thrill. Somebody there's a different, somebody might just like the smell of it. Somebody might just be showing off their bare ass to everybody, and that's the only reason they're there. They maybe have but it's not what it looks like. It never is. And you can only know what it is for those people if you ask them and they're willing to share it for you. There is no one size fits all. And that's the big thing. Are there people with mental issues? Are there people that are damaged? Yes. Are there more people with mental issues and damage than in the regular population? I don't think so. I think it's exactly the same percentage. Kinky people often come off when you first meet them as potentially more psychologically unstable. And the only reason for that is if I'm going to let you whip me, I'm going to tell you about my PTSD. I'm going to tell you about I was bullied as a childhood. Please don't call me this because that really triggers for me. And the first, 5 minutes, I'm going into my childhood traumas and my psychological issues because you're about to hit me and I want to have a good experience. So it's not because I'm more, it's just, this is the situation. You have to be there. Where vanilla people sometimes will never talk about it. and maybe just become alcoholics, or whatever.
Shut the fuck up, Max.
It's the same percentage. I would argue that there's no higher or lower. In fact, if anything, I think there's a slightly lower percentage. It's not therapy, but it's a kind of therapy by kind of working through some of these things. Sometimes some people don't work through it. Some people just fetishize it and it becomes a dirty little thing. But eventually over life, it might be something they work through. But it's just one of those things where, because you are going to do something with somebody that is a little more risky, you tend to have to really get honest real fucking fast. I assume we're allowed to swear on this thing?
Oh, no, you can't fucking swear. Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Okay, good. Sometimes I forget. But, yeah.
Wow, we were talking together so smart. We were talking so smart. You couldn't swear. Oh, see, that's.
I know. So intellectual.
You mentioned something about
Christian. I was on a Christian BDSM podcast. It went very well, and I was just watching the podcast the other day, and it was like, before it starts, there's all these warnings. Just so you know, some of this stuff may be triggering.
Oh shit!
Because I think I probably said something along the lines about my thing about how God is the ultimate dom, and I mean complimentary speaking, but I don't think the Christian BDSM people took that as well.
In my intro,
and they had caveats in the opening.
In my intro, did I say warning? This week we're going to be talking about sex today. I think
so.
Did I say that?
You really kind of fucked that whole intro up. You basically started recording, you're doing this, you're doing that. I mean, it was just a real shit show right from the beginning.
It's a lot of buttons. You mentioned,
I get that.
You mentioned PTSD, and I wanted to go back to that because I've had some experience and very good friends, being in the fringe. I feel like I've been in the fringe of kind of the alternative community, and it seems like a lot of military people are into kink, into this.
Just as likely as the regular population.
Yeah, is it? Are the numbers the same?
If you've been in the military, it's twice as likely to be kinky. Part of what makes you good at the military is pecking order, following order, and protecting. I mean, I know lots of women that will only date military guys because they're trainable and they really have that authority, and they like the hierarchy kind of thing, and so they're really into more of the BDSM side of things. Twice as likely as the regular population. Same as police. Police are 3 times more likely. Judges 3 times more likely. And as you go up in education, it becomes even more likely. I think they say 1 in 4 judges. I think you're probably wearing stockings underneath the bench.
I think that any dungeon master should take a mental note in their games to add that to the characters of judges, police, and military. I mean, all of my NPCs, my non-player characters, which apparently NPC is now in the nomenclature of the general public. Anyway, do you know what an NPC is, Max?
No, non-playing character.
Yeah, so it's like a random, or just another person that's not a player. And
we call it an extra in a movie.
An extra, yeah. Well, an NPC is not just an extra. So any supporting character would be an NPC as well. The stars, if the stars are the players, those are player PCs. Everyone else is an NPC. But in the nomenclature, if you say someone is an NPC, they're an extra, they're a sheep, they're a mindless mob or whatever, zombie. Anyway, Ken, all of my NPCs had kinks. Okay. They all do.
So do you. It's just a question of you admitting it to yourself.
I
think it's okay. Methinks he doth protest too much. All my friends are kinky, but I'm not.
Bill and I nail each other all the time.
There you go. Happy days.
So I feel like I'm worse. I feel like I'm the mean one, honestly. I feel like I pick on him out of my own, it's definitely from my own, he always feels so comfortable. So I feel like I have to pick on him because it's an easy trope for me to
You'd be called bratty in the kink world.
Bratty.
You know, it's a brat is like someone who's basically but kind of keeps pushing the buttons of the
like a jester.
more dominant of the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like a jester or like a harlequin type thing.
Yeah, it's and it's always such a balance anyway. I mean, it's both people are well aware of the game and playing it. You know.
So I mean, this is a kink lens, right? Like if I subscribe to any philosophy, for example, religion, pick whatever religion you want, then I can describe everything as a worship of God, right?
Zoroastrianism.
There you go. I mean, you're going old school.
There's no God. It's the universe. Even Buddhism doesn't necessarily believe in a God. It's
fair.
They even say atheism. Like the more the atheist fights back against other religions, the more they believe in God. Like it's actually it's against atheism for an atheist to go. So like a mental note to all my fellow atheists, you're supposed to embrace or not even care, it's not.
What I'm trying to say, I mean, to go along with that, actually, these are categorizations. So if we go down the rabbit hole too far, I don't want to quote Fight Club, but I might. On a long enough timeline.
Nice shot.
Right? The life expectancies of everyone is 0. Like statistics do a certain thing. We can all agree. I think you can say a statistic and sort of bend the perspective, right? Bend the lens to make a point. But that doesn't, while that is technically a true statement, it doesn't mean that it's useful. Maybe is a better way of saying it. So is everything a kink? It's an interesting way of looking at things because there's a power balance. There's a dynamic, of course, in every single situation. Now to slap the label kink on it, I think is a little disingenuous is the wrong word. I think it's a little incorrect.
Certainly, if you want to go with Western thinking and you want to sort of be academic about it, of course. I mean, you have to put the labels, you have to classify, you have to differentiate. That is what Western academic thought is all about.
So convince me here.
Name. Well, I mean, it's the nature of the universe, nature of our exploration as humans to, label everything, try and prove theories. And this has all been incredibly useful for us to build houses and find food and build technologies and all the rest of it. But is it really us, or is it just something that we do? Is it really real? I mean, isn't it possible that it's just we give these things value, or almost playing this kind of like, from the universe's point of view, they're probably laughing at us as like clever little children who think they've got the shit figured out. And there's some potentially enormously more intelligent thing thinking that's so cute that they think they take this stuff so seriously. They have no idea what's really going on. So, I mean, it depends on your foundation of these things. I truly believe that we can't know anything. And those are all opinions. I mean, I think Newton's laws aren't laws anymore. They're theories because quantum mechanics has disproven a lot of Newtonian physics. So even though we thought that was the way of the world, we've learned that it's not. Still very useful when you build a bridge. But I guess it just depends on how philosophical you want to be. If you want to be academic, you want to go for the Western thing, sure. You can get into the minutia of debating, authentic roles and identifications and self-awareness and all these things if you want. But I don't know. I think I'd rather take a larger picture and back up from it and try and find the commonalities rather than go into the minutia.
It sounds like, and this is a bit of judgment, but that's who I am. It sounds like you may have. It sounds like you may have listened to Alan Watts.
Ah, we love Alan, of course. I
love Alan Watts. There's a short story. This is a little tangential. There's a short story by what's his name? Isaac Asimov. and it's called The Last Question. And I think he wrote another one called like The Last Answer or something. But you can actually go to, I don't know if you've read it or not. Have you read it? Just random fucking short story. I read iRobot. I didn't like the movie. I read iRobot.
Yeah, well, it was not the same thing.
No. Go to YouTube and you check out The Last Question. You can actually see or hear Isaac Asimov read his favorite short story, The Last Question, and talking about Alan Watts. A lot of it, I don't know how much Isaac Asimov was influenced by Hinduism and that kind of thing, but it's pretty intense stuff. So you'd mentioned the universe looking at us, and I kind of subscribe to this idea that we're the universe, right? Because we're a part of it. And we're conscious, or we have conscience, we have consciousness, we're sentient. So we're the universe knowing. Kind of like your brain and your foot, right? Like there's a big rock, a planetoid, that's a foot. We're the brain.
It's very Alan Watts. I mean,
it's very Alan Watts.
One of his long speeches is within the realm of human possibility. It's just possible that we are God and we've chosen to exist and forget our true nature just because. What would God do for fun?
There you go.
And he talks about the thing about, well, people, that's not possible. I don't know how I make the sun shine, and I don't know how I make the water flow and all this. Well, do you know how you make your foot move? Do you know how you make your heart move? Do you know any of that stuff? You do it. You think you're at least omnipotent over your own body. You get that, but you don't really know what you're doing, do you? You're not making, okay, cell number 454 grow, this cell do that. You're not consciously doing these things. You don't have. It's humans and our ego to think that we have to actually consciously do all these things rather than just be, and I don't know, I always thought that was an interesting thing that makes me happy to think that I'm probably very stupid and that it's fun to just kind of come and dream the way I want to dream.
Yeah, did you ever get into like
being a sub?
Did you ever get into like Aleister Crowley or like any of that world of thought? Hedonistic.
That's
yeah. Is that too French? Have I gone too French?
No. No. I've read that a long time ago, but I can't remember the gist of it.
Sure.
I know the name Aleister Crowley. I know that Crowley is often a demon in many lores of games.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
Tarot.
I don't know what Aleister Crowley wrote. Oh, it's the tarot?
No, well, he did a tarot deck. He was focused on certainly the occult and some stuff like that. So it might be. What about kink and the occult? Is there any nature like kink and witchcraft?
Absolutely. I mean, these are just roles. I mean, that's why I like backing up again. Maybe you want to play witch and demons and this and that. Some people do religious role plays and these kinds of things, and they're experimenting. Some people that were maybe damaged in some ways by the religious upbringing sometimes like to counter that with some of their other play. If your church always told you thou shalt not masturbate or thou shalt not never do anything like that, and you want to do it, maybe there's some backlash against that. So kink is everywhere in my mind. It's just the natural human thing to try and work this stuff out. That's my broad definition. If you wanted to find kink a specific act, I dare you to find that many acts that everyone isn't already doing. And if you are going to stick to the extreme stuff, then kink is pretty rare then.
Well, right, it's funny you say thou shalt not masturbate. I mean, one of the things that is going on in our political shithole that is America is a thing called Project 2025, and it is in the process of banning pornography. I actually live in a state where Pornhub is banned. You cannot get on Pornhub in this country, in this area. And beyond that, a lot of the news that I'm exposed to is saying that there is a rightening across the planet. It's not just America. It's in Europe. It's in certainly other countries that, masturbation, alternative sex stuff, alt porn, anything is becoming problematic, and there's a lot of stuff relating to that. I know in Russia, for instance, being gay and out is not a thing that you can do. Not to make it bleak, but
I think that I honestly no, but I think what happens, and I think if you look at history, unfortunately, this is just the nature of history. Before things open up, then they close down. They open up and they close down. Weimar Republic Germany was probably wilder than we've got to yet, and unfortunately, that didn't end well. There's this sort of like openness. Close in Germany now is a wild, crazy place. People can do what they want to do. Again, there's this natural progress of, okay, no, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. Then people go, well, no, wait a minute, stop. And then when enough people say stop, we want to go back, then it all closes back down again. Then then it opens up again. I think, unfortunately, and it sucks if you're living in this time, because shit's going to get tighter again. It's going to go underground. It's not going to disappear, by the way. A lot of dominatrixes that, as much as they want the world to be open to kink, this is good for business, because Republicans are the best customers. They'll pay to keep this stuff on the DL. They don't talk to their girlfriends about this stuff. They don't go, hey, honey, can you put a strap-on on? No. They go and hire professionals for that. So, this isn't going away. This is never going away. It's just going more underground again. People aren't going to be able to live out and about, live proud, but it's not going away. And eventually it will come back again, But it sucks right now. It's going to suck for a while. Well,
it's just like
authoritarianism coming in to remake a society.
Yeah, it's just like in A Handmaid's Tale, which is a pretty scary book to me. They went to a sex club. It was only for the elites or only for those in the know, but that stuff existed at that time. It was just
Hitler's Germany had whole like Lebensraum programs for people to go shag and bring. Yeah, I mean, that shit was real. They just it's not going away. It's just gonna. They're just setting a narrow set of rules. I mean,
sure.
Reality is it's hard and expensive to rule a diverse nation, which is why I always try and make the argument that diversity will reward you in ways you might not have expected.
Sure.
But it is true that when you've got 1,000 different cultural groups and people that all think differently, where someone like, oh, I would never take $1 from the government unless I was starving, versus what, they're giving out money? Sure. How do I get it? All these different kinds of things. It's just cultural. Like, you're in one culture and you might take whatever you can get. Another culture, like, I'm too proud to.
Sure.
It's hard to run societies like that, to make rules that work for everybody. So authoritarianism says, no, this is the rule. Follow it, and you're okay. Don't, and you go to jail. It's very efficient. Look at Singapore. I mean, a little fishing village turned into one of the wealthiest countries in the world because it had Lee Kuan Yew, the giant head, who basically tightly imprisoned any of his rivals, made things like chewing gum illegal because he didn't like them.
Don't spit chewing gum out.
Well, now chewing gum has been recently decriminalized.
Oh, wow.
It's now.
But it was my experience. I mean, I've been to Thailand, and one of the things I noticed, I mean, you can't deface the money or spit chewing gum on the street, but and clearly it has been decriminalized. But one of the things I noticed was there was a large amount of people from Arab countries. And, they weren't drinking alcohol, but I have no doubt that they were utilizing the, industry that is
the
there.
Festivities.
This stuff goes. So it's just, it's not going away. It just sucks that you basically aren't going to be able to be out as much as you were. And there's certainly not going to be as much funding as there used to be for things like that for a while, but it'll come back.
But
maybe needed to happen, because I do think that the younger white men, looking at suicide rates and everything else, have been getting a bit of a raw deal lately. They say a lot of people voted for Trump. One of the biggest surprising things was mothers with sons.
Yeah.
were voting because their son's in the basement and their two daughters have jobs as vice presidents. There has to be a bit of a rebalancing.
I can say this now because we're not on Twitch, but if we were on Twitch, I couldn't say anything about incels, and that is a thing. And I know he didn't like me talking about incels, but I mean, it's like men in this country think that they can just do or say whatever, your body, my choice, and have some kind of success with that. And the reality is that, there is something to be said about, and this is going to sound me being conservative, but you have to entice a person to like you. You can't just steamroll them to like you. That's just assault and rape. It's not.
Yeah, that's just like the geekiest of the geekies that got no game.
Yeah.
Find a community of other geekiest of geekiest that have no game, and once those group of people get together, they find out who to blame.
Right, and that is becoming more common because we have a Call of Duty game culture that they don't know how to interact with people because the pandemic pulled people away, and I think this is just a ebb and a flow, like you were talking about, for sure.
It really is, and you can. People sometimes will point to one group and say that all men are like this or whatever. I mean, there's extremes in every branch. I wish I could remember the name of it. A friend of mine recently pointed out it's a group of women that are basically get together and talking about. Is that what it is? Where they only men can, it's perfectly fine to leave your husband if he's not giving you enough money.
No.
There's like stories of like,
the 4B people or the B4, I can't remember which one is sworn off sex with men. Like they're just like.
No. This is women that are just wanting, basically want to be kept and discuss on how to do that. And that, this comes like, my husband was a plastic surgeon, but he, had to go back to be a GP during COVID because there wasn't a lot of plastic surgery. I think it's cool to leave him, right? Because he's had to cut my allowance, right? Everyone's yeah, of course. If he's not paying the allowance, you should, and your job is to look pretty and be sexy and be this and that. And these are women who are putting this on themselves, that their job is to be trophy wives and men should respect, to me, that's just as bizarre.
I think that it's that aspect that is actually on the outs. I think that the way that America has kind of positioned itself, and this is where the issue with incelism is that women in this country are getting educated and our, birth rates are lowering and women are autonomous. They are individuals.
Absolutely.
And that is where this pushback is coming from, is that you have to be smart. You have to put effort in. You have to try. And I feel like I'm very lucky because my partner, she is way the fuck smarter than me. And more interesting on every level, and I feel very lucky to be in the relationship that I am, but I've worked for it, and I think all relationships are difficult, and you have to listen. You can't just say, "Well, it's my way." I had a friend, a very close friend of mine, he put his foot down, and his wife left him. I mean, what do you expect? You create a wall, and there's no manipulation. Yeah, the other party's gonna take the fuck off, and that is a reality that freedom of choice that men in this country are facing, and they need to grow up. That's my personal opinion.
I actually think it's not that at all. I actually think I take a slightly softer view. I think it's a mental health epidemic. I think the reality is, and I've had psychologists tell me that older generations weren't allowed, especially men, weren't allowed a full spectrum of emotions. You're allowed to be angry and slightly pleased with yourself. Men don't cry, and don't get hysterical. Men don't, there's all these other emotions that we weren't allowed to have.
Yeah.
So you have those two emotions. I can be slightly proud of myself and I can be slightly aggressive. So which one are we doing here? Oh, okay, she's not doing well. I'll have to use the slightly aggressive part.
Right.
There's this lack of ability to converse. So I love the fact that shows like Ted Lasso and these things where men are starting to talk about emotions and feelings and stuff, because you're never going to get any game until you have a fully developed set of emotions to play with and ideas. If you were never taught if you were always taught boys don't cry, boys don't do this, boys don't do that, you're fucked. You better, and that's a wonderful thing about Kink, again, to pull it back, is people that want to learn those things in a safe environment. There's crying events where guys go and the whole thing is to cry. Literally just go and cry as often, as loud as you can. It's incredibly cathartic. It's a kink, but it's also very therapeutic for people.
Right.
Now, to find these emotional spectrums, it's not, it's just mental health. We need to deal with mental health.
A little history for me is my parents broke up when I was very young. I had no strong male, figure. So I was definitely influenced by female, and maybe that was the issue, is like, I never had that issue because I understood the way that females thought and looked at the world. Even today, Bill, what about you? Where
How
he's a player. I mean, Bill's a player. So, like, if anybody can learn how to, like, no, he finds the most beautiful women. I mean, I feel like I'm a lucky person because I have a very beautiful partner. But like, he's always like, women flock to him, I'm sure.
This is not true. I do have an extraordinary special lady friend right now. And I'm not going to say I'm lucky. I mean, because I don't believe in luck. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, she and I work that shit.
Yeah, you work at it.
But she is spectacular. Okay. I'm going to move away from that. What I do want to talk about, or what I do want to talk to you, Max, about is this. The House, which is Kink. I think you should write the book. Okay. 2, if you would, tell us about your movie.
Sure. Well, movie's a product of 7 years of filming. I met a dominatrix one day, and I was just surprised how many preconceived ideas I had about what she was supposed to be. And having had the luck of traveling the world and feeling like I was a fairly knowledgeable person, it really shocked me how I had all these cliches about her. She talked very honestly and openly about these things, and it just was so fascinating. So that she led me to more, in this world, to get access to people that are really knowledgeable, you have to be vouched for. So she, vouched for me, and I got more people, and I just followed this journey of meeting these dominatrixes and these people that are into this world, and it would just emerge into the story of 3 main people that I had met and what happened to them over the course of the year. And the main purpose of it for me was just create a documentary that explains kink a little to people, gives them a peek behind the curtain. So if they are curious, if they are a little bit curious, this will give them a nice little entree. This isn't the whole world. The whole world is much bigger, but this will give them a little bit of a sense of what it is and how to play safely, and to show them, people aren't damaged any more than the average people are. So it was a journey of discovery.
So you got into these, I don't know how to say this. You got into these parties, these events, these play parties, etc. Were they mostly in America? Were they in different places? And how did you go all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it started in England. Went to a number of events called Torture Garden, which were more latex fetish type events. Then I ended up in Los Angeles at a convention called DomCon. I consider myself a male dom. I never really had interacted with female dominatrixes before to this extent. And then suddenly I'm at a convention with 1,000 of them, and got a chance to sort of find out what that world was. And then from Los Angeles, I ended up going back to England, then down to Costa Rica, up to Canada, back to Los Angeles, back to England. It was a lot of traveling over the course of the year, because the people that I ended up featuring were in England, Los Angeles, and Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So
LA has a great a very solid fetish scene. I mean, I've been to, and it seems like the music that I'm interested in, industrial goth kind of music, runs really hand in hand with that scene in Los Angeles. There was like Miss Kitty, I think, did a lot of shows. If you have the opportunity to catch a Miss Kitty show, I don't know if they still do it or not, but they were probably the most open experiences, like sexually, where there was very little kind of held back in a public space.
California is definitely the most on your cuff, very open about it. It's also, has one of the more diverse communities, and some of those communities are less inclusive than others, but it's certainly more open. Personally, I prefer the East Coast. The kink parties are all secret, all invite only, all in like special locations, and they're a lot more interesting and a lot more intense in my mind, because it's formed around groups that aren't necessarily that politically correct. They just want to do what they want to do. Where in California, it's the fact it's become so public. It's so many. I'm finding so much with getting into politics and less fun.
Well, I think that
I like to kick the politics out of it.
The stuff in California, I didn't notice the politics, but again, this is 15 years ago is my experience. It seemed a lot more show. Like a porn, it seemed a lot more for the audience and not necessarily. I mean, I'm sure these are people who get off on that stuff and they're in the kink world, but it's also they are participating in an experience that is related to an audience, so it becomes more like a theater or a stage kind of event versus something that we're in the East Coast. I live East Coast-ish, adjacent at least. It's not a group of people that are interested in sharing whatever it is the fuck inside of them with the rest of the world.
They're more private.
Yeah,
absolutely, much more private community in the East Coast for sure.
And
most of the world is
with the experiences that I've had on the Midwest or wherever the fuck I am in Kentucky. There's a dark family. There's a group. It's very connected, and the conversations in the groups are a lot smaller. And so that's, I'm sure, why you have had that experience. And this is, again, from the outside. It's not something.
No, it's true. I used to DJ communities.
I used to DJ drum and bass and play these parties where, people would be on the floor, and they'd be all over themselves doing ecstasy and like, completely screwed out of their mind. Is there this leads me to a random question. Drugs and kink, is that a thing? Drinking, drugs, kink?
It's generally frowned upon, especially on the BDSM side of things where we're wielding whips and things like that. If hand-eye coordination is a bit of an issue when you're going to be flogging somebody, so generally seriously frowned upon. In the other house that is kink, a fetishism where people are dressing up and going to clubs and wearing latex and fucking, I'm not going to lie, that's all part of it. It depends on what part of the community or sub-community you're in. I was just thinking when you were talking before, it's like if you're in Kentucky, there's a big wall around the castle that's kink. If you're in California, there's no wall because there doesn't need to be. It's the communities that feel more isolated or more out of the norm will put up the bigger walls and keep it a little bit more private. Or California, it's like it's been, go west, young man, for a long time.
So Ken is a filmmaker. And I would be interested in knowing Max, your process for going about making this film, and to hear you guys discuss that.
My God. Well, I would never do what I did this last film again, but the process for this film was generally literally interviewing everybody that would talk to me and following everybody I could for about 100 days and ending up with 600 hours of material that I had to cut down to 75 minutes. And I will never do that again. But I didn't know what I was going to find. I didn't really know this world as well. And I wasn't sure who was going to be an interesting story. And everybody seemed interesting to me. It's like, the first day, the first week, I think I interviewed 100 dominatrixes because I could, but I wouldn't do that again. It's just too much work. So this process was, I think I had started with around 250 people, and then I followed up with them a few months later, and of which maybe 25 had something interesting coming, and then I followed up with them again. It was down to 10. I wanted an arc to appear naturally. Again, not something I would highly recommend anybody doing. In future projects, I'm going to make sure I know what the conflict is before I even do any interview or any footage on them, that I have some idea what the conflict is. I'm not going to go, well, we'll see what happens. So this process was insane. The only thing was mitigated by the fact, funding these things is always the tough part. And the one thing that mitigated it is I got my funding from a kinky dating app. It was kind of like a Tinder for kinky people that was well funded. And I basically entered the world and said, look, this app over here is paying for me to be here. Please sign up for this app. Without them, I wouldn't be here today. So I would be able to talk to more people because they were funding all my production. So that worked out okay because it was funded. But would not recommend doing a movie like that. It's better to know, even with a documentary, to at least know what your subject is, know what you think the conflict is going to be, and then focus in that. It's better narrative structure, and you won't end up with 600 hours of material.
It'll take less time if you have an intent. If you ask leading questions.
Well, even that, just to know, like, okay, this person I'm interviewing is, going to be arrested or has a legal battle coming. Just something more than everything. If someone answers, "Hey, everything's fine, nothing's going on really, but I'd love to talk to you." Yeah, I don't want to talk to you. I need there to be some conflict, something. And otherwise it's just.
So you said Los Angeles was one of the locations that you interviewed people. Where else?
Started in London and Los Angeles. London, Los Angeles, Montreal, New York, Costa Rica.
In Montreal, for all the Americans watching that don't know anything about Montreal, it's kind of like Las Vegas, where prostitution is legal, and I think that's an interesting place. Do you have? I mean, are there a lot of ties between the kink and prostitution? Is that, or
not really?
I don't want to say prostitution as sex work. I think is the more appropriate term.
Oh, you want to sex work? Okay, well, I think everyone has to decide that for themselves. It's not about hide the salami so much. Like the dominatrix isn't going to be dominatrix isn't going to typically be shit. Right. You're still paying them. They're doing things that are give you intense sensory experiences that may or may not result in orgasms. Usually not.
Yeah, because they're not going to give you a hand job.
Or any other. Typically not. Now, I know everyone does things their own way. I mean, there's a whole generation that's been influenced by kink.com, which drives a lot of the old school people crazy, because it's like at the end of it, then the dominatrix is like, okay, now shag me. It's you have to talk to the individuals about that. And it also depends on what you want to call sex work and what you want to call prostitution. But most of the whole gray around that is probably for legal reasons. Some people do, some people don't. But for the most part, doms don't, because it kind of spoils the dynamic anyway. You want that as a goddess. That's someone you worship. That's someone you do as you're told. You would never expect to have that from your goddess. It'd be bad for business too. You want them to want it, maybe dream about it. That keeps them coming back. But I don't see it as being a typical pay for play, sort of pay for sex kind of situation. Pay for an experience. And a lot of people, that's the other thing about kink, is that, especially in the house that is the room in the house of kink that's called BDSM, a lot of it is about adrenaline, endorphins, all those things. Filming the documentary, I had the good fortune of dating one of the world's most famous doms with like ridiculous amount of experience, and I'd never bottomed. I'd never been whipped. It really appealed to me. And I had a 4-hour session from her She started with a tap, tap, tap on the hand and ended up with a whip. I never felt a difference, but when she stopped, I've never tried heroin, but I'm pretty sure this is the feeling you would get from heroin.
Wow.
It's just pure like joy. I guess when people are very good at this, you can ramp the pain up just enough that your body keeps giving you more happy juice. And you do that for 4 hours with enough skill that when they stop, your body has just filled you with all this happy juice, but now it has no pain. And I honestly, I don't know what heroin feels like, but I was like, it was like an orgasm that lasted for half an hour.
Yeah, or you could
it was the most intense feeling, and that's what they.
And
that's what people are paying for. That's why people pay top dominatrixes lots of money to do these long ass sessions. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking typically to get off. That's what a lot of them are looking for. Is that happy juice, the chemicals your body gives you.
And when you get off, you want to go to bed. You're asleep. It's like the difference between a $50 sushi dinner and a $300 sushi dinner. You know,
you want what you want. You want what you want. If you're high stress guy and you just need a mental vacation, you want to be tied up and put in a body bag with sensory deprivation and left there for 4 hours where you can't do anything. That's what they want. That's what they're paying for. If they have issues with something and they have some sort of fetish they want to play with, they do that. It's more about everything else. Like sex is pretty easy to get. Kink is kind of everything else that's a little bit more particular, shall we say, a little bit more tailored, more bespoke.
Can you be in a healthy relationship with a partner, and would it be cheating to go to somebody else with kink?
Interesting.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, that was funny when I was dating the Dom in the beginning. I wasn't sure I didn't really know what she did. I mean, I didn't know, honestly. I had a lot of same questions that your listeners probably are like, okay, is there sex going on? What's going on? Like, okay, how far does it go? What can I live with? And she was just so open and transparent about it that I was like, after a while, I was like, okay, no, it's totally fine. But everyone's different. You know, you have to find out who you're with and what's going on. But yeah, I think you could be in a healthy relationship and if you have an interest to scratch an itch or to try these more extreme things, why not? I mean, there's religious connotation to this stuff. A lot of different religious groups and tribal groups will hurt themselves and inflict a kind of pain on themselves to get closer to some knowledge. They're this thing where they put hooks to people, lift them up to give them different sensory things or to challenge fears. If that's something you want to explore and your partner doesn't have the skills to do it, I would say, heck yeah, go for it. Go, but find yourself someone who knows what the fuck they're doing. But yeah, if you want to learn to go parachute and your partner doesn't know how to, find a teacher to go parachute. If you want to get suspended by meat hooks and fly up and down through supported only by the flesh of your skin, make sure you really have someone who knows how to do that. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's not cheating. Again, every relationship's different. It depends on what that definition, what that couple decides is cheating or not. But in terms of good old fashioned hide the salami, I don't think that's typically a thing.
That's wild.
That is wild. All right, so let's start wrapping this up. Well, maybe like 5-6 minutes. Of course, we're going to give you the last word because that's what we do. Ken, do you have any other questions?
Well, I mean, I have one. It's a long one. We've talked about. I mean, I think Kink kind of started in medieval times, or there. That's kind of what the research that I bet it started at the dawn of humanity.
The Romans were kinky as hell, but whatever. Right. The whipping boy, the Romans had that going on.
I mean, it's as soon as there were humans gathering together, they were kinky. I have no doubt about that.
There was certainly dominance and submission going on right from day one. I'm the boss, and you're going to follow.
Absolutely. So we talked about everything from the joys of listening to your partners and understanding what they want, what they need, and kind of getting immersed into being your own true self. And this is something that you need to be as a human to survive. Survival mechanisms. And a lot of times, we're faced with issues like rhetoric saying that, what we're doing is wrong or what is happening is wrong, to, even violence and quotes like your body, my choice, and banning porn. There is a lot of passion in this world of I'm going to call it, like, what is it? Alt to kink and BDSM and that, there's just a ton of human condition in there and stories and reality. My question is, could you or would you be interested in thinking of a way for us? We do this Monday night gaming thing called Dreadlore. I think it would be fun to do like a kink or BDSM game with our people if there was a Dom or somebody who is really well versed in the idea of creating a story that our troupe of role-playing game people would go through in that world of kink. And if you had a suggestion of who we should reach out to, or if you had somebody in mind that would be interested in telling that story.
So I don't think I completely understand what you're looking for. So you want somebody to sort of narrate a story,
a theater of the mind.
Like a story of. Okay, so like a story, I could, in my mind, it could be the story of learning to be a submissive and finding your power and submission and all this kind of stuff, and learning about protocol and following the rules and XYZ. So somebody to tell a story like that.
Yeah, and Bill wrote the book. Bill, he wrote the book on Dreadlore, so it's like Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. So it's all and we would stream it live on our podcast on a Monday night. I think it would be a lot of fun to kind of go into that world, and we'd create characters that had that would be in this world that a Dom would create. Potentially.
Well, I think, the classic, if you read the story of O, not the movie, wasn't so great, but the story of O, of, someone following along and learning this for the sake of love, which is ultimately why a lot of people do this, is love, wanting to find a deeper meaning, deeper connection, and doing it in a very sort of unusual way that the story of O is, I think, would follow a lot of that, entering into that world, learning what slave training is, how to behave, what high protocol is, how to serve your master, the rules of these things, what not to do, what to do, how to say. There's a lot of, especially there's this thing called high protocol, which I love. It's kind of a bit of a dying art, but incredibly strict rules about everything. What a collar means, what a leash means, what eye contact, what you're allowed to say, how you're allowed to stand, how you're allowed to sit. It's a fascinating world. Certainly that would be one that'd be rich for a role player game. Yeah. Read the story of O, or even see the movie if you have to, and you'll sort of get a little bit of a sense of it. It's a very old movie, but it's still one of the better at sort of giving you a little bit of that, what it's like to go through that process, especially what it was back in the old days when it was still quite underground.
Yeah,
they're a little heavy. They're a little bit more heavy into the pain thing.
All right. Right. Okay, so Max, we're going to give you the last word. Thank you for joining us, of course, and discussing all of this. It's a joke, an anecdote, something you have to say, a promotion, whatever you're into.
Please go see Touch Kink. I think it is a great little entry, and I do believe that even if you don't consider yourself kinky per se, I think there's a lot to be learned from this world in terms of communication, and there's a lot of happiness to be gained from understanding these processes. We're all much more complicated than any of us realize. So if we go through this process of being a little bit more open, listening a little bit more, you don't have to agree with everybody, but you should at least give them the space to talk and to try and learn and try and listen to what they're saying. I think Kink is a very rewarding community to learn about. So I think my movie Touch Kink will give you a bit of an introduction, and I hope you get as much out of it as I did.
And where do we find it?
TouchKink.com.
TouchKink.com.
Just drop Touch Kink and you find it all over the place. Just Touch Kink.
Or you'll find it in our, we'll have it in the...
Yeah, in the description. Are you doing any festivals or anything, or?
Yeah, I did 18 major film festivals last year. I'm just winding up that process now. I was at Atlanta Documentary Festival, London, Berlin, but a lot of major festivals. It is a controversial subject, so I didn't get any TV deals in North America, but I got some TV deals in Europe. So it'll be on German TV and Italian TV and a few places. The Europeans seemed a little bit more ready to have these conversations than North America. So
and there's a strong community here. I'm happy to forward your info along to some of the people that I know. If that's,
please do.
That's helpful.
Absolutely. I built a mailing list of about 10,000 people while I was making it, but there's always more. And that's what's happening right now. Actually, a lot of different local Kink communities are actually licensing the films to do local showings because it's a good sort of good kind of introduction to Kink for the masses. So that's been happening a lot. They're doing them in real life, and some of them are virtually as well. So sometimes licensing the film for those kinds of things is fun too.
That's cool. Awesome, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on the Geeky Gamer Podcast. Where we talk about kink, everything from gamer girls to trans to and how they relate to tabletop role playing games. Wait.
I want to put you on the spot. I've always liked the idea of getting into games, but one of the things I find very intimidating is it just seems like there's so many of them. If I had to learn one game right now, what's the game that you should learn? What's the game I should be playing?
Well,
he's pointing over there. I don't know what that means. Yeah, is that a game?
He's pointing because I am to the left of him on the YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So he's talking about Dreadlore, which is the game that I created. That said, I mean it's very role play forward. The mechanics promote cooperative storytelling. So whoever's at the table, you're going to tell a good story because the mechanics are reinforcing that. As in, if you play the game right, you're going to be rewarded in game for doing a cooperative story. Okay, so of course I want you to play Dreadlore. The biggest game that there is Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, and the 5th edition would be D&D, and it's the most accessible. Of course, the kinds of role play that you're going to get into vary as much as you can imagine. You're going to get people where it's almost like you're playing a video game and there's no personality whatsoever, and it's more like a board game, and you're just rolling dice and
where you get into these battles and they you did
10 points and whatever.
A battle that would take 30 seconds in real life is going to take you a half hour to fight.
At the same time, you can find groups where it's not like that at all. Like Critical Role and those guys.
It takes Critical Role like a half hour to fight a boss. Yeah. That is a real thing.
So to answer your question, you have to find a group, which I think you probably already knew. You find a group of people that you vibe with, and you play really any game with them, and it's gonna get you where you need to be. I said Dreadlore because I think the system promotes that. You are welcome to join one of our one-shots if you want.
Check it out
on Monday.
The only game I ever played a long time ago was called Diplomacy. was like taking over World War I Europe, and you actually have to. And the thing I loved about it, because you'd have to negotiate with people and come up with treaties. And all. The game itself, the game mechanics were pretty basic. It was all about am I lying to you or not? What I say, I don't.
You're basically Austria-Hungary, and you've got to convince Germany not to go your way. You've got to convince them. Oh no, I've got your back. I'm going to move my guys this way. I'm not going to attack you here. I've totally played diplomacy. I like that game.
I love that. I love that game. Anyway. Is there a game like that, like a popular version of that going on anymore? Is that still going?
I mean, you can play
I'm
that.
sure there is in some form.
Okay.
I'm sure there is.
Play Axis and Allies with some of Bill's friends occasionally.
Okay. Okay.
Which I hate that game.
He does. He hates it.
Join us on a Monday.
Okay. All right.
That'd be cool.
Thank you. That would be great.
All right. Ken, you want to lead us out?
If that's what I do, that's what I do.
That's what you do.
Every Monday at exactly 3 p.m. Eastern Standard.
Exactly.
We play this talk show where we talk about tabletop role-playing games and anything geeky and kind of talk about all sorts of random chaos. Anyway, thanks Bill and Ken for hosting. That's Bill and me and all lowercase letters. Mr. Interrupt supplied the audio music for it. Art media by production by Cowsfire Media, as well as Trois Replay Productions, brings us everything else.
Whatever they do, we don't really know what they
from
do.
2018 to 2023. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Max, for being on our program. Please check out this documentary. It sounds like there is a host of other really amazing communities that you can get involved with and kind of get an insight into a different world called Touch Kink. There's information on IMDb. There's information on the websites.
Touch Kink.
There's information
on Google.
All together now. Touch Kink.
Touch Kink. It's a touchy-feely grabby. Consent is always important. Thanks for joining our Geeky Gamer podcast.